Hello, my name is Mako with Mako's Mercantile, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you the basics on how to sculpt a Mandalorian helmet. I'm in Blender 2.9. There's a couple of helpful add-ons and features here that I have enabled that I'm going to go ahead and walk you through, as well as show you how to configure the project to scale in millimeters, which is going to be incredibly helpful for kind of last final touches and scaling for moving to a 3D print. So the first add-on that I use in Blender to kind of help with this process is a tool called Measure It. So if you go into the preferences and go to add-ons and search for Measure It, 3D view, Measure It right here, and enable this. What this is going to do is it's going to allow you to create permanent measurements that are visible on objects by selecting vertices. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press N to open my side window. We're going to go to View, down here at the bottom, Measure It Tools. We're going to turn this on to Show. And then I've got two vertices on the default cube that are highlighted. If I hit Segment here, it's going to create this little blue line that shows the distance between those 2 points in Blender scale. So this is a really helpful tool for determining actual scale when you're moving into the 3D printing prep section of designing a Mandalorian helmet. And so I've gone ahead and enabled that. You can quickly hide or show the measurements that you create by pressing this button at the top, as well as controlling the measurements down here at the bottom of the window. And then the second thing that I think is really important when setting up this project is to make sure that you update your project scale to be millimeters, which is typically the design scale that we use for 3D printing. So to do this, there's two things that you need to change. The first is you're going to go into the scene settings, and you're going to go under units here. We're going to set our unit system to metric if we haven't already. We're going to set our length to millimeters, and we're going to set our unit scale to 0.001. And you're immediately going to notice that all of the grid lines have gone away. So we have to fix that as well. And in order to do that, we're going to go up here to the Show Overlays just to the side of it. And we're going to hit the little drop-down menu here. And we're going to go to the scale right here. And we're going to change this to 0.001 as well, which will then return our scale grid lines to our project. Now you'll notice if I go ahead and add a new segment, we have a here we go. We have a new measurement line, and it's saying 0.00 meters because this is incredibly small for the actual units of measurement that Measure It uses by default. So in order to fix this, we're going to go over here to under the items dropdown under the Measure It tools, and we're going to change the units to millimeters as well. And now you will see that our scale is correctly scaled to be 2 millimeters in Blender. All right. Now there's one other piece of the puzzle here, which is setting yourself up with a reference. So I have a bust base mesh that I like to use whenever I am designing a new Mandalorian helmet. And I have this already copied to my clipboard, so I'm going to press A to select all and delete everything. And I'm going to go ahead and just Control V to bring in my bust base mesh. And I'm also going to go into the view settings, and I am going to change my clip start or clip end to a higher denominator for millimeters, and that will help keep it from disappearing as I zoom in and out and kind of take in all the detail. So these are the essentials that I recommend whenever you're first setting up a project file for designing a Mandalorian helmet, and the rest is going to go from here. So to get started, I have created a new collection here to store all of my helmet objects so that I can very quickly select all of those without selecting the bust base mesh, which will be helpful later. And under this, I'm going to go ahead and add an object, and we're going to add a cylinder. So let's go ahead and turn on the wireframe view so that we can see this inside. And we're going to go ahead and scale this cylinder up to encompass our helmet, or our bust base mesh. So it looks to be a decent size. You can kind of adjust this later, so it's not a huge deal, but we want to make sure that the cylinder fully encompasses the bust base mesh that we have as our reference point. So we can turn the wireframe off. Good. That's our cylinder. So we're going to start by modeling out the basic helmet shape. Okay. So the cylinder is our foundation for that. Now, if you study Mandalorian helmets, they are not perfectly round. So the very first thing that I'm going to go ahead and do, actually, let's go ahead and turn on our see-through X-ray view. I'm going to go ahead and scale this cylinder in so that I have just a fair little bit of space on either side of the ear there. And that's going to kind of give us the oblong shape that we want for the Mandalorian helmet. So we've adjusted it to be not the perfect circle and kind of conform to the naturally oblong shape of a human head, and that's great. So the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to go ahead and go into the mesh edit mode and deselect all of that. And what we want to start to do is add loop cuts to the upper part of the mesh here. So we want to add the one on the center, and then we want to add another one above that to kind of split that in half, and do that again. And we're just going to progressively create tighter and tighter meshes, loop cuts using the mesh here, the automatic placement. So that should be good for now. And then we're going to select the top right here, and we're going to go ahead and press M and merge those at center. And what that is doing is creating a central vertex point that we can use to kind of get the curved shape of the top of our helmet. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to progressively select the lines down here, and I'm going to take our scaling tool, and I'm going to uniform scale these in and start to sort out the curvature and the shape of our helmet. So that's okay. We can go a little further in with that. And I'm pressing Alt and clicking on the row of vertices here. If you kind of click in between them, it will select the entire outside. So that's good. And then let's go ahead and select all of them. So we're going to Shift and Alt and click. And let's bring these all in together a little bit more. And now you'll see we're starting to get a little bit of the shape of the curvature of the helmet. I'm going to turn on the X-ray view again so that I can kind of see. And this line that I have selected right here, you actually kind of want this to be just above the brow line, because what this is going to ultimately form is the kind of ridge that accompanies most of the Mandalorian helmet shape design. So we're going to actually double tap G to go into our uniform move, and we're going to bring this down to just above the brow line. And then I'm going to kind of space these out a little bit better to get a better curvature of the shape. So again, I'm just selecting with Alt click and then bringing these down to get a more uniform shape and curvature. That's looking good for now. Okay. So we're starting to see the helmet shape kind of come into place here. Another thing that we can do to kind of see what this is going to look like as a final shape is we can go down to the modifiers tab. We can add a modifier and do a subdivision surface modifier. We can kind of crank this up a little bit and see the general curvature of our shape. So when you're working with this modifier though, you're going to want to make sure that you keep the bottom edge creased to keep it flat and straight. So we're going to select that bottom edge. We're going to hit Shift E, and we're going to bring that all the way out to the right, or to a factor of 1 in order to keep our straight edges on the bottom. All right, so I'm going to continue to tweak this and kind of get it to where I want it to be in terms of general shape and guideline. But we're getting very, very close to what I feel like is a good working shape for a Mandalorian helmet. And with this, there's not really a science. It is kind of all just down to the feeling, what you're kind of feeling with the shape and the design that you're going for. Excellent, that'll work for me. All right, let's kind of tab out of that and look at our object. Good. All right, so the next step, we're going to add in the visor slit. So Mandalorians have their distinct T-shaped visor, and what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are kind of opening up our base helmet so that we have that T-shaped visor kind of worked into the design. So I've gone back into edit mode, and I'm going to go ahead and go to x-ray mode so that I can kind of see where the eye line is. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and click the red X to give me a full front view on this. And I'm going to hit Control R to bring up my loop cut tool, and I'm going to line up a loop cut right with the center of the eye line here. And then from there, I'm going to hit Control B to bevel, and I'm going to open this up to be just about the shape and size of the eyes inside the model. And that's going to be the first step here. So I can turn back off this. And then I'm also going to want to do the same for the front slit. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go, I'm going to hit 2 to go into the edge select mode, and I'm going to shift and click. Well, I'm going to go back to the vertice select. I'm going to shift and click, and I'm going to Control B to bevel this out as well. And you want the shape of the T-slit on the front to not quite be the exact width of the nose of the base mesh. All right, and so now I can press 3 to select to use my face select tool, and we're going to go and we're going to grab these faces here, and we're going to hit X, and we're going to delete faces. All right, so we have our general T-slit visor shape now in the base helmet mesh. Now, just like before, we're working with the subdivision surface modifier now, so we want to make sure that we go ahead and block out our mesh on the edges to make sure that the model knows we want to keep hard edges in these spaces. And because we have kind of created a negative opening in this space, what we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to also crease our connective edges as well, and you'll see that as I crease those, it brings in the C shape, like so. Now, when you're designing, this is something to notice. You can see using the subdivision surface modifier that I do have a pretty noticeable crease here. One way that you can resolve this without that crease, let's go ahead and take this away, checking this to a factor of -1. If you work if you work your way off at a 45-degree angle from the corners here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect, I'm going to select this vertice, I'm going to select this vertice, and I'm going to press J to join these two. I'm going to do the same at the bottom, J. And then I'm going to select this, I'm going to press 2 to go to edge select mode, I'm going to select this, I'm going to select this, I'm going to press X to bring up my delete menu, and then I'm going to dissolve these edges. You want to kind of work with squares as much as you can. So I will also fix this down here. But we're trying to work with squares here as much as we can. So by creating a square space here and then creating these creases, what we will ultimately end up creating is a crease in the mesh that is a little bit easier to sand out in post-production. So, but that will come later, just kind of showing the idea behind how to clean up the overhanging mesh in the negative space that we created here. So the other, obviously you don't have to do the vertical lines as well. You could potentially do these and any lines, any edge creases pulling back from the corner here are going to help keep that overlapping from happening. Okay, so t-slit is in place. Let's talk about other features of Mandalorian helmets. So the iconic t-slit visor is the core of any Mandalorian helmet's design. So you have to preserve this shape as much as you can, but there's some modifications that you can make. So the size can be a little bit bigger. The upper t-slit can be a little bit more slanted and less straight. The lower section of the t-slit can be tapered, so it can go from a wider to a smaller. But this is the core of the Mandalorian helmet's design. So, all right. So moving on, up here. Remember, we created this brow line. So actually, I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup here from the bevel. I'm going to go ahead and select this and this vertice, and I'm going to press M to bring up the merge tool, and I'm going to merge those at center. And I am going to move this out just a little bit, because by beveling it, I kind of created that indented section. I want to undo that work. I'm going to select that vertice, I'm going to delete it. Oop, I'm going to dissolve it. And that'll help keep that from being a little depressed section of the mesh. Bring that out a little bit more. Okay, so we talked about our brow line here. So this is our brow line, because what we're going to do is we are going to create a noticeable crown ridge right here. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and Control B, or I've selected it using Alt click. I'm going to Control B to bring up the bevel tool, and I'm going to bring these out like that. And I am going to select my lower loop, and I'm going to Shift E to give myself a crease. So I've got a crease on my lower tool, on my lower loop, and I'm going to select my upper loop, and I'm going to go to scale. I'm going to bring this scale in just a little bit. So that's good. And then I'm going to Shift E to create another crease. And so what you will see now is that if we go back into object view mode, we have created this kind of uniform crown border that's going to separate the lower section of the helmet from the upper section of the helmet. Now, I, just as personal preference here, I am going to adjust the top now that I'm starting to see the design in the physical space. There are things about it that I would like to fix. So namely, I want this to be a little bit more pronounced. So what I'm going to do is I am in edge select mode. I'm going to alt click on my loops all the way up to the top, and I am going to scale these in just a little bit more. That's good. And then I'm going to not select that bottom loop, and I'm going to do the same with the crown again. And it's helpful to, again, use X-ray mode so that you can kind of see the general curvature of a head whenever you're making these adjustments. So periodically make sure that you're checking and not encroaching on the head on the inside of your helmet by too much. Okay, so it's looking good. All right. Okay. The next feature of Mandalorian helmets are the pronounced cheek plates. So Mandalorian helmets have a very signature cheek depression. It can be a very hard line. It can be curved. There can be detailing inside of here. But this is something that is central to all Mandalorian helmets that needs to be designed in. So what we're going to do is, at this point, now that I am moving away from overarching edits to this design, I want to go ahead and divide this in half and mirror it so that I'm not having to do the same edits twice and worry about scaling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go into Object Edit mode. I'm going to come down here, press 3 to go to the Face Select tool. I'm going to delete the face on the bottom to open it up. And then I'm going to press 1 to go into the vertice edit, and I'm going to bring up my X-ray. And I'm going to click the red X to bring up the very front of the face. And so what I'm going to do is just to the right of that center line, I'm going to work my way all the way up. Make sure that I get all the vertices on the right half of the model. There's some out there. Good. And I am going to press X to bring up my quick delete menu, and I'm going to delete these vertices. So I have now created half a helmet. And we're going to go back over here to our modifiers tab and go to add modifier down to mirror under generate. And we're going to set this to be on the Y axis. Okay. So now if I turn off the X-ray mode and go back to edit mode, you will see that we've got our helmet kind of recreated in this space. Now we're getting a weird ridgeline here as well as the curvature. So what we need to do really quick is go through and clean up our mesh to be creased along these edges. So I've selected all the edges. We're going to do Shift E to a factor of 1. Shift E to a factor of 1. Very good. And let's go ahead and up our merge value on the mirror to 0.3. Nope. 0.1. 0.01. Essentially, playing with the merge factor there is going to soften out our mesh along the point of the merge. The softer that line is, the easier the mesh, the helmet will be to affect in post once you've printed it. So that's fine, that'll work for now. And now you will see that if I go in and I make any edits to the mesh on one side, it will get replicated on the other side. And this is going to be important for pretty much every step of the modeling process from here on forward. All right, so when we're designing in the cheekbones, what we want to do is we want to create kind of our hard stop point for where the depression is going to end. So what I've done is I've selected the edge that is just behind where our t-slit ends, and I've gone ahead and increased that to a full factor of 1. And from here, what I'm going to do is I am going to bring my vertices along this front edge in. to kind of create this negative space in the mesh. And that will work for now. So you can see we're starting to get the shape of the cheekbones kind of worked into the design here. I would recommend creasing this point as well as these points, so that you can start to see the visor outline take shape as well. And if you want to add additional detail to this, what I would do is I would subdivide these faces. So I'm going to select my edges straight across, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to right click, hit subdivide, and let's do that again for the outside edges. Subdivide and connect these vertices using select N and J. And we can now use these vertices to shape our mesh a little bit better, a little bit more. And again, it's super important here that you're constantly checking your work on the inside of the mesh as well as on the outside, because the last thing that we want is to design a helmet that is not wearable. So you have to make sure that there's plenty of clearance space with the head on the inside of the mesh. I'm going to go ahead and bring this curvature point up by selecting all of my lines there and pressing G twice and bringing it up here. And let's bring it back a little bit more. Good. We're getting somewhere. All right, so now we have our cheek depressions kind of sorted out. And there are other ways that we can kind of work with this. I'll show you real quick. One of the more distinct designs that I really like with cheekbones is when there's kind of a curved and really stark line that runs down the cheek plate. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take this line right here, and I'm going to crease it to bring it in really hard, and then I'm going to slide the vertices on the points that I've already created to kind of create this intentionally curved and tapered design. And now if I go back into the object mode, you will see that we're starting to get that kind of more pronounced cheek that is typical of Mandalorian helmets. Now, the reason why this looks a little off right now, it's actually twofold. The cheek lines are a little bit too stark, so they come in a little too sharp. So what I'm going to do to fix that is adjust them down a little bit. And that's looking a little bit better. And the other piece of this puzzle is that we don't have our true visor shape in place. So to fix that, all we have to do is use this edge right here and this edge right here to kind of create our the shape that we're looking for. So let's go ahead and select this edge right here, which is going to control all the way up here. It's also going to control this point right here. And let's bring this out a little bit to make this a little wider. It's good. Actually, before we do that, Let's go ahead and connect this point right here. So I'm going to switch back to vertex edit mode, and I'm going to switch to X-ray mode so that I can make sure that I get them all. And I'm going to select my vertices here. I'm going to press M and merge at center. And that way, when I go back to the edge edit mode with 2 and slide this, you'll see now that the mesh all moves together. Technically, we had 2 vertices stacked on top of there from bringing this line across and down. So we're going to bring this out a little bit. And I want to make sure that I'm not going more than a 90-degree angle on my next point back here. So I'm going to go ahead and take this vertex and bring it out a little bit. And this one as well. And this one as well. There we go. So now we have a little bit more of a pronounced faceplate. We can take this line right here, and we can do something similar with it by bringing it straight down. And it's looking good. Check it from edit mode. And let's go ahead and take this piece right here, and I'm going to go back to the full straight on view. Let's go ahead and recenter our view on the helmet, or on the bust base mesh. Go back into the helmet, and let's slide this out just a little bit. There we go. Looking good. And we already have the section that's above the t-slit in place. However, if we wanted to modify that at all, we still can. In fact, I feel like it's worth raising our crown just a touch so that the top of the faceplate and the bottom of the faceplate are roughly the same size. All right. And now we are very quickly starting to see a little bit more of the Mandalorian helmet kind of come out of our cylindrical shape here. Now, a couple of other minor modifications I'm going to make as I go along. I do want my t-slit to wrap around a little bit further, so I'm going to go ahead and crease my edge here. And we're going to go ahead and select this edge and dissolve it or delete it to open this up. And you'll see, because we've got our mirror modifier, it's gone ahead and done that for me on the other side, which is nice. I don't have to worry about it. And the reason being is I do actually want this to, I think I want this to line up with the cheek plates. So the cheek depressions should line up with the edge of the t-slit. And then we need to go ahead and pull out our overhang like so. Okay. So there we go. All right. Next, you're probably noticing as well as I am that the design kind of comes down at a nice angle, and then it becomes very straight. So what I want to do here is I want to take my outside edge here, probably 1, 2, 3, 4 edges back, and I want to bring these out just slightly, and I mean just slightly. Mandalorian helmets typically are not straight edged. They either kind of curve in at the bottom or they taper out. And so you want to make sure that you're being conscious of that in your design. But that's looking much better. So we brought that out, and then I want to make one more slight adjustment to that there to kind of preserve my nice tapered edge on the back. Excellent. All right, so we're very quickly designing ourselves a Mandalorian helmet here. All right. So the next piece of the puzzle is how to add mass to the helmet itself, as well as how to kind of work with or cover up the seams. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is I am going to show you how to add mass to the helmet so that when we go to 3D print it, it is not just a obscenely thin line. So we're going to go back to our modifiers tab here, and we're going to add a modifier. We're going to go to generate, and we're going to go to solidify. This is the one. All right, so we've turned on the solidify modifier, and you can already see that we're starting to get a little bit of kind of an inset, a mass to our edges here. So what I would like to do is I would like to bump this up to 1 millimeter. Nope. Okay. So this thickness is not exactly... No, actually, I suppose it is to scale. So let's go ahead and crank this down a little bit more. 3. That feels like a decent thickness to this helmet. So we're going with 0.03. Typically, I would work with what I feel like is between 0.03 and 0.04 in this scale. 0.03 will work here. So that's going to add some thickness to our mesh. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and apply this so that from here on out, I'm working with the full volume of the helmet. So as you may have noticed, I now have an extra dimension that I'm working with, and I have to go back in and recrease my edges. So I'm going to select all of my newly added edge points, and we're going to shift E to scale those. And now we have these as well in the corner of the eye. So if I go to the X-ray mode, you can see that back in here there are 2 more edges that need to be creased. And I don't remember, so we're going to find out together if decreasing these frees this up. It does. So now that I've removed the impact on the mesh that our negative space was creating here by adding volume inside, I can remove my extra creases that we were using to kind of pull those overlying faces back in on the corners, because by creasing the inside edges there, I have been able to create my hard angles on the t-slit. So there we go. We've added solidity to our mesh, which will help for 3D printing. And the final step is kind of cleaning up after mirroring. So just like I applied my solidify, I'm going to apply my mirror. And I am going to go back through here, and I'm going to hit Alt and click to select all the way along my seam here. And we're going to Shift E to reduce that edge factor down. And what we should see is a loss of our ridge here, but that is probably also being affected by... So technically, all right, so this is going to get a little complicated here, a little bit complex. Because we merged 2 halves of a projected object, there are, it's going to be really hard to see here, but you can kind of see it poking out right here. There are edges that are connecting the front and back of the mesh along this way. So what I'm going to want to do here is turn on X-ray mode, and I'm going to want to go along this ridge and remove all of these connecting points. with the exception of this top one here. So let's select that one, and that one, and that one, and that one, that one, and on down until I have all of those selected. There's one more right there. All right, if I hit X and delete these edges and go back into edit mode, now you can see that we have a nice clean mesh with no creasing along the outside edges here. Because we have a solid vertex point here, we will always have a little bit of a point on the mesh. But again, let's find out together what happens here if I remove the connecting edge, if that affects it at all. I'd say that's actually a significant difference. So, as I just showed, let's go ahead and remove this edge as well. And excellent. So that's going to kind of smooth that out, and then you can sand it down for the rest. And now you have a very rudimentary Mandalorian helmet. So that's my tips and tricks on how to do the base sculpting on a Mandalorian helmet. From here, you would go further to add the ear cap designs, rangefinder, crown, any kind of crown detailing, and then of course you also need the rear vent. That's necessary for Mandalorian helmets to pass if you're going for the approval at the Mandalorian Mercs Costume Club. The other things that I would potentially do if I were designing my own helmet is I would actually create a extension of my faceplate here and actually not have it be a part of my base helmet mesh. I've got the shape in place, and I would kind of bring that out to give it its own dimensions and kind of create a little bit more of a hard edge here on the inside. As well as give yourself the ability to kind of shape it independently of the helmet itself. But that's the tips and tricks that I got. So if this was helpful to you, I would really appreciate you letting me know. But otherwise, best of luck to you as you go on this journey.